Hey everyone, and welcome back. In this video, we'll take a look at some of the date-time functions inside of Excel. Within Excel, you have a lot of different date-time functions available to use, as we can see here on this list. In this lecture though, we'll go through the most commonly used and most helpful of these, and these are the functions that are highlighted in green. For this lecture, we'll be using a different dataset containing a couple of dates, and as per usual, you can find this dataset within the section folder within the course materials, and the spreadsheet is just called date-time functions. The first function we'll have a look at is the date function, and this can be used to combine single date entries, for instance the year, month and day, into a single cell. And over here within our combine column, we'll use the date function to combine the year, date and month values currently found separated in columns A, B and C. We'll start by calling our function, and then here we have our arguments, so we'll need to provide the year, month and the day. So first we'll enter our year, which we have in cell A2, and then our month in cell C2, and then finally our day, which we have in cell B2. The sequence of the date values in our spreadsheet holds no significance as long as we input them correctly within our function in the order of year, month and day. And here we can see that in cell D2, we now have our combined date value. And let's autofill this down for our remaining rows. On the flip side of this, we also have the day, month and year functions. And these can be used to separate a combined date value out into its day, month and year values respectively. So if we look at our first combined date here, we could actually use these three functions to extract the respective information. And if we call these functions, we can see that the only argument they require is the serial number, which is just the date. Next, we'll have a look at two other functions called today and now. Today can be used to return the current date, and now can be used to return the current date as well as the current time. So just below our table here, we'll call the today function, which Microsoft described as returning the current date formatted as a date. And then to the right of this, we'll call the now function, which returns the current date and time formatted as a date and time. And these results are the current date and time for me as I'm making this lecture. And this here is a perfect opportunity to now look at the DATEDIF function. And as the name suggests, this function allows us to find the time difference between 2 days, and it can return the difference as either days, months or years. So something interesting about the DATEDIF function is that it is a somewhat hidden function inside of Excel, and it does not appear in the list of functions when we use autocomplete or browse the list of functions inside of Excel. The absence of this function from the function list is intentional, and while Microsoft has not officially documented or supported this function in recent versions of Excel, it still works completely fine. So let's now use this function to calculate the difference between our date in cell D2 and today's date down here in cell A10. Start off with our equals and the function name, which is DATEDIF, and here, unlike normal, we can see that Excel does not provide the autocomplete for us. So the first argument that we need to provide is the start date, which we have in cell D2. And then the next argument will be the end date in cell A10. And then finally, we have the unit. And this is where we can specify either days, months or years. But I'll just use days, so we can open a set of quotes and enter D. And we can see here there are 7,639 days between these 2 dates. We could also change the D to M for months or Y for years. And then the very last two functions that I'd like to show you in this lecture are the weekday and the weeknum functions. Weekday is used to return the day of the week of a particular date, where the day is given as an integer from 1 to 7. And something very important to note here about this is that by default, Sunday is returned as a 1 and Saturday is a 7. This behavior can be changed with the optional return type argument, and on screen now is a list of all the options available for the return type. I'll just leave mine as the default. If we check our calendar here, this should be a Monday. And that's because, as you mentioned, Sunday is a 1, so Monday is a 2, Tuesday is a 3, and so on for the rest of the week. And yep, we can see here that on the calendar, the 14th of April 2003 was a Monday. And the week num, as the name suggests, will just return the number of the week in which that date falls. So running it on cell D2, we can see that this date fell into week number 16. Okay, and great job there. So we're making great progress here. I hope you found this lecture valuable. So these will be the main date and time functions that you'll be working with inside of Excel. If you've got any questions so far, please feel free to leave them in the Q&A below, and I'll get back to you. So with that said, let's move on to the next lecture.